Sundiata Keita is one of the greatest figures in African history, yet his name is still absent from far too many textbooks. He was a founder, a warrior, a spiritual figure, a statesman, and the architect of one of the greatest empires West Africa would ever know. But his story didn't begin with glory, it began with humiliation. Before he was called king, before he united the Mandinka people, before he drove back a tyrant and forged a nation, Sundiata was a boy who couldn't walk, a boy mocked by his own family, a boy whose strength was invisible until the day it shook the earth. Born around 1217 in the small kingdom of Niani, Sundiata entered the world under a prophecy. A hunter had told his father, King Magan Konfata, that he would bear a son through a woman of unusual appearance, a woman touched by spirits, who would give birth to Mali's greatest ruler. That woman was Sogolan Keju, Sundiata's mother. But when the child was born, the court was disappointed. His legs were lifeless. He could not stand. He could not walk. Too many. It looked like the prophecy had failed. His stepmother Susuma Biri took every opportunity to ridicule him and his mother. Sundiata became an outcast in his own household, crawling through the dirt, while his half-brother, Dankaren Tumen, was groomed for kingship. But even in exile, Sogolan never lost faith in her son, and Sundiata never stopped listening. He absorbed the rhythms of the griots, the patterns of power, the stories of the ancestors. He watched as his mother was mocked and abused, and then one day, after a particularly cruel public humiliation, he asked for an iron staff to be forged. The people thought it was a joke until they saw him use it to pull himself to his feet. Slowly, painfully, with effort that seemed to draw strength from the earth itself, Sundiata rose. That moment is legend, not just because he stood, but because the world stood still as it happened. The boy who could not walk had defied the odds, but more than that, he had announced himself. The prophecy had not failed. It had only been waiting. His newfound strength didn't protect him for long. When King Magan Konfata died, Susuma acted quickly. She placed her own son on the throne and forced Sundiata, his mother, and his siblings into exile. They fled from one kingdom to another across Ghana, Ouagadougou, and eventually to Mema. They were often treated as political refugees, sometimes as burdens. But exile shaped Sundiata. He learned the intricacies of foreign courts. He studied warfare. He listened to advisors and generals. And more importantly, he built relationships. He earned respect not as a prince, but as a leader in his own right. Meanwhile, Mali descended into darkness. A new threat emerged, Sorcerer-king, the king of the Soso. Sumoro was not just a conqueror, he was feared as a sorcerer. He was said to control spirits and wear the skins of those he defeated. His reign was defined by terror. He invaded neighboring territories, enslaved nobles, and silenced the griots who tried to speak the truth. The Mandinka people were broken, scattered, living under fear. But through it all, they remembered the prophecy, and they remembered the boy who stood. Envoys traveled across kingdoms to find Sundiata in Mema. When they arrived, they told him what had become of their homeland, and Sundiata answered. But he didn't return in secret or alone. He began to build something bigger than an army. He built a movement. He forged alliances with rival clans and former enemies, Fulani, Wolof, Serer, and Mandinka. He promised not just revenge, but justice. He promised not just a throne, but a new kind of unity. He gathered warriors, elders, mystics, and statesmen, and together, they marched. The final battle came in 1235 at Kirina. Sundiata's forces faced the full might of Sumoro's army. Some say Sumoro could not be killed by iron. Others say his powers were bound to a talisman that Sundiata discovered and destroyed. Whatever the truth, the battle was epic, and in the end, Sundiata emerged victorious. Sumoro fled. His empire crumbled. The Soso were broken, and the region was finally free. But victory wasn't enough for Sundiata. He didn't simply take power, he reshaped it. He called together the leaders of all the major clans for a great council known as the Kurkan Fuga. There, on the plains of Kongdaba, he laid the foundation of what would become the Mali Empire. It wasn't just a coronation, it was a constitutional moment. Rights were defined, laws were declared, land was distributed. Slavery among Mandinka clans was abolished. Women were granted inheritance rights. Griots were honored and empowered as the keepers of history and justice. It was a revolutionary moment for 13th century Africa, arguably for the entire world. And with that, Sundiata Keita became the first Mansa of Mali. He ruled wisely for over 2 decades. The empire grew rapidly economically, culturally, and politically. Niani was rebuilt and transformed into a capital city that reflected the dignity of its people. Trade routes expanded, linking Mali with North Africa and the Middle East. Gold, salt, ivory, grain, and textiles flowed across borders. Markets thrived, roads were secured, the people prospered, and most importantly, they felt part of something larger than themselves. Sundiata ruled not through fear, but through consensus. He balanced the practical with the spiritual. Though a Muslim, he allowed traditional African religions to flourish. He never sought to erase culture, he sought to harmonize it. This balance is what made Mali strong. It was not just a kingdom of wealth, it was a kingdom of meaning. As Sundiata aged, his legend only grew. He wasn't just a warrior king, he was a moral symbol. He became the reference point for leadership across generations. The Griots tell us he died peacefully, perhaps in battle, or perhaps taken by the spirits. His tomb remains hidden, perhaps intentionally, so that no conqueror could ever desecrate his remains. But his true resting place is in the words passed down over centuries, in the drumbeats of ceremonies, in the firelight where stories are told. His memory lives not in stone, but in spirit. Today, his epic is still performed. It is one of the greatest oral histories in the world. It is West Africa's answer to the Iliad, a living, breathing document of identity. It is taught in schools, sung at gatherings, whispered from griot to apprentice. The story of a crippled boy who rose, an exile who returned, a warrior who built not just an army, but a future. Sundiata Keita reminds us that greatness isn't born, it's forged. Through struggle, through discipline, through faith in a destiny that no one else can see. He stood for justice when others bowed to fear. He chose unity when division was easier. He led with wisdom, and he listened more than he spoke. He didn't just conquer a tyrant, he healed a nation, and in doing so, he left behind something even greater than an empire. He left a path, a legacy, a truth. He was the Lion King of Mali, the boy who crawled, the man who walked into history, and the king whose echo still lives in the soul of a continent.